Thank you, Manu, for the invitation to talk a little bit about Lukso and my ideas and the things that we have been building over the last few years and how this correlates to the things that you're talking about using Web3 and blockchain technology and society, government, and and how we organize ourselves as humans. Let me first explain a little bit about what Lukso is itself. And I'm trying to not be too technical, but at the same time we're talking about technology, so I guess it's unavoidable. So Lukso itself is basically a layer 1, or it's a blockchain like Ethereum. So that means it's its own network. It uses a proof-of-stake consensus algorithm. It's pretty much on a network level the same like Ethereum, except that it's younger. It has been started like last year in May. And the innovation here is actually on the way how you build on this network and the building blocks that you use or that people and developers use to build apps. When it comes to programmable blockchains like Ethereum or Lukso, where you can install smart contracts, you basically have the ability to create all kinds of little programs that run on this blockchain. And in order that different kind of websites, interfaces, or applications know how to speak to those programs and to those protocols, we need to agree on standards. We need to define how does these smart contracts look like and how you talk to them. And that kind of led to a wave of standardization. In fact, the first standard that was created in 2015 is called ERC20. Probably many of you have heard about that. And ERC20 is kind of a standard for a token. So this means that the token could be a token for whatever. Could be money, could be a membership, could be a reputation. But the smart contract that represents a token has certain functions, and those functions are defined in the standard. That was also the first smart contract standard that led to everything that we saw after ICOs and DeFi and all of these things. So that's a standard that I proposed together with Vitalik in 2015, and this led to this wave of standardization. In Lukso, when we started a network, or actually one of the reasons also why to start a new network is to introduce a new set of core standards that people use to build decentralized applications. And this new set of standards, they are very hard to bring to an existing ecosystem like Ethereum, because there you already have everybody using ERC20. Everybody is using already accounts the way we are used to, using MetaMask and public and private keys. And it's very hard to bring change, right? If you have an ecosystem that already went down a certain path. So when you introduce a new blockchain, you have the ability to actually set the new building blocks and say, hey, this is how we should do accounts, this is how we should do tokens, and this is how we should do other building blocks, that are imperative for creating new kinds of applications. So this kind of standardization, if you want to renew it, if you want to, let's say improve those existing standards, ideally start with a new network. And in a way, that's kind of what Lukso does as well. And the innovation in Lukso is, besides improving existing standards, is the introduction of a smart contract account system. And the smart contract account system is basically a way to interact with blockchain that gives you more abilities and more flexibility than your normal public-private key account gives. To give a little example, if you want to use blockchain today, you need to understand what a wallet is. You need to install a wallet on your phone or your computer. You need to write down a seed phrase, which is the password that creates your private key. You need to make sure you have this backed up. And then if you want to interact with a blockchain, you most likely need to go to an exchange, get the token of the blockchain that you want to interact with. That can be a very lengthy process from signing up, doing a KYC, transferring money, and so on. There are on-ramp tools that make it a bit faster, but it's definitely a lot of barriers that you need to go through in order to actually interact with blockchain applications. So that's a user journey that obviously will never lead to mass adoption. because it's too complicated and it's too many steps. And in fact, that's the reason why, even though blockchain has been hitting very high values with trillions of dollars in market caps, haven't really led to the fact that we have mass adoption. Another fact for this is also blockchains are limited in scalability still, and that's inherently a problem, but also a feature of blockchain. But it's mainly also because the usability has been very difficult. Smart contract accounts basically help to solve that, because you are basically abstracting away your blockchain account from your public and private key to a smart contract, a little program. And that program can now have any kind of functionality and still does the same thing like any kind of public-private key. So you have an address. This address is not just backed by a private key, but it's backed by code. And it can do the same thing, holding assets, interacting with other smart contract tokens, for example, or DAOs, or protocols of any sorts. But at the same time, it can be managed more complex. So now you can create a user experience that's more like Web 2 and even better than Web 2. And it's also allows you to recover your accounts in different ways, so you don't need to write down the seed phrase and hope this is the only way you can ever get back to your account. So that's what smart contract accounts promise to solve. And what I have been doing over the last few years, and together with my team, basically building out such a smart contract account. But not only coming from the idea of doing this as a custom solution where we just build an app and we build custom contracts and we make sure we have that version working and now we can show people, hey, you can have this account, but thinking it from a standards perspective first. That probably comes through the nature that I created the first smart contract standard and that I was thinking about standards for a lot of time now. But basically, we define every building block and every piece in the smart contract account as a standardized piece. In fact, this smart contract account that we have built consists of many standards that plug together as modules that have different functionalities. And on top of this, we also standardize tokens, NFTs, and also make sure that they all work together. And that's the beauty, because we have a new network. Now people do it the new way. They're using these new accounts and they're using these new standards for whatever they are building. That now allows for a better user experience. We call that actually universal profiles. I would describe them as a public blockchain profile or a public internet profile that is completely self-sovereign, fully controlled by you if you want so. But at the same time, it can do anything a blockchain account can do. But you could also technically use it to sign into websites, and you could build all kinds of other systems on top of this, like, for example, private messaging or some kind of data storage with selective revealing of data and other things. So it's a very versatile system. The challenge to build such a system lies in the fact that you need to make it defined enough, but also flexible enough, because you don't want to create a system that's specifically only for one use case and works for a certain set of applications and developers and users, but it should work for almost anything, right? And we don't know what the future brings, so we don't know what people want to build in a year or 2 or 5. So you need to build a system very generic. And that's kind of like where it's challenging and where it's also where it's quite interesting to get that kind of middle ground right. And I believe we have achieved that, and there's a lot of years who went into thinking this through and building it out and testing it. When you have such smart contract accounts, you're able now to build things that can actually change society as we know it and at large, because now we have a digital identity, and I don't like the term identity because on a blockchain, identity is inherently public. But it allows for a digital identity that's fully self-sovereign, and it can interact with any kind of machines or systems, and can verify itself because it uses cryptography and public key and signing, and it can interact with the blockchain it lives on itself. So that means you can interact with the protocols and assets that sit on the blockchain, which then allows for systems where communities and technically even governments and organizations and all kind of ways of participation can happen that involve actually value transactions, that involve voting, that involve governance, and that involve interactions of communities across borders, and even interactions between people that don't know each other across borders. And that's obviously what blockchain brings to the table. But if you add this account system, you now allow for this to be usable by normal people over time. But you also allow for this to have the account to it. And what that means is that you can create over time your reputation on your profile. So if you have today a blockchain account, then this is an address with a private key. That's not an account you're going to use for a long time, because you would need to make sure that this private key stays safe forever, right? So imagine you're an artist and you want to create a reputation around your address and your account, and you want to issue all of your assets from this account. You need to make sure that that private key is safe for the next 5-10 years. But you also have to use it every single time you're doing something. Or you might be able to, you might be losing it, and you can't recover it. So it's problematic if you want to have a long-living and a long-lasting account system that you want to build reputation on. And that's exactly where universal profiles and the smart contract account system helps, because if you can manage it properly, if you have the ability to manage it from different devices with different levels of permissions, with recovery, even the ability to have multiple people collaborating on the same account, or the account itself or the profile itself being a DAO, having a governance behind, or even being a corporate account that has different levels of permission with departments and all of this, then people start to actually use those accounts on a long-lasting basis. And now you get things like reputation. Now you get things like recognition, because you will see, okay, if it's this address with this unique name, I can now check on chain all the things he has done since the inception when the account was created. So that kind of transparency and traceability allows for a whole new way of how governments can work and organizations can work, and new decentralized organizations can work. And I think that's really the fascinating aspect of this technology. And these ideas were there all the time, and they were there since a long time. But what didn't really happen is make that usable and make that humanly manageable. And yes, there were smart contract accounts, and they call it wallets, and some ideas of this, but they were always custom built. They were never built on a standards basis, and they were never built as the core account that is suggested to be used on a network from the beginning. And I guess that's where Lukso is unique, because it's a new network, and everybody on that network uses universal profile as their main account. In our little young network, we have now over 15,000 profiles since 2.5 months, since this is released for mainnet, these profiles. And that's quite a growth, given that this is so young. And that's kind of like where universal profiles come in as a first experimentation, iteration around new digital identities that are user-owned, and not controlled by a third party in a website. So I hope this gives you guys a little bit of a food of thought, to think more about what is possible.